So you're ready to buy a home, and now you want to know, what does the home buying process look like? What happens once your offer is accepted? Well, today I'm going to walk you through the home buying process after you have an accepted offer. Now, this video will solely focus on the events that will happen once you are under contract. So if you would like to understand what happens prior to going under contract, take a look at this video for the first 4 steps of the home buying process. By the way, my name is Milena. I'm a local realtor with eXp Realty, and for the last 6 years, I've helped buyers and sellers in the Charlotte area. If you have any questions about real estate, do not hesitate to reach out. All of my info is below. Let's get started. So the seller has accepted your offer, and now you are officially under contract. As soon as you have that signed contract from the seller, this will mark the beginning of your due diligence period. The due diligence period is a negotiated amount of time for you as the buyer to have your inspections and any kind of investigating into the property. This is also when you finalize any kind of financing. Now, the due diligence period is a negotiated amount of time. However, it typically takes about 3 weeks. It could be less, it could be more, based on the market conditions or the type of home that you're buying. Now, there are a lot of moving parts that will take place during your due diligence period. And that is why it is crucial that you have a strong realtor and a strong lender to help you navigate the process. We do this every single day, so for us, this is just another day at work. So to understand what happens during the due diligence period, I'm going to walk you through a timeline, but understand a lot of these events might be happening simultaneously and not necessarily consecutively or in this exact order. But this will still give you a general idea of what to expect once you go under contract for a house. The first step in the home buying process, once your offer is accepted, is to get the contracts to the lender and the attorney. As a realtor, this is the very first thing I do once my buyer goes under contract. However, keep in mind, not every realtor is me, so do your due diligence as a buyer and make sure that the lender and the attorney get your contract. The lending aspect is going to take the most time out of anything throughout the contract period. As soon as the lender receives your contract, they will then order the appraisal, which will take place in the next week or two. Now, throughout the due diligence period, you will be working with the lender and their team to finalize your loan. As far as the attorney, in North Carolina and South Carolina, the attorney has a really important role in the home buying process. Not only will they conduct the closing, but they will also do the title search, which is a really important part of your due diligence process. The title search will ensure that the seller has a legal right to sell you the property and that the home is free of any liens or judgments. The attorney will also review the survey for you. Now, you will have to have a third party perform the survey, but the attorney will review it and let you know if there are any easements or boundary disputes that you'll need to have addressed prior to closing. The next step is for you as the buyer to write the due diligence and the earnest money checks. These checks are due as soon as you go under contract for the home. Now, the due diligence is a fee that is paid by the buyer to the seller to compensate them for taking their home off of the market and for the buyer to run their inspections and investigating into the property. This fee also gives the buyer the right to terminate the contract for any reason or no reason at any point throughout the contract. Now, the buyer will get this money back to them at closing, but there is a caveat. If the buyer decides to exercise their right to terminate at any time for any reason, then they will lose the due diligence money to the seller. Now, the earnest money works a little bit differently. It is still a check written by the buyer, but it is held in a third-party escrow account, typically the attorney. Now, this money also is given back to the buyer at closing. However, if the buyer decides to terminate the contract after the due diligence period, then the seller will keep the earnest money. Your realtor will be responsible for dropping off each check to the respective party. The next step in the home buying process will be to have the home inspection. So the general inspection will inspect all of the major systems and the structure of your home, everything from the foundation to the roof. Depending on the type of house that you're buying, it may be advised for you to have additional inspections outside of the general. Also, depending on the type of loan that you're getting, you may be required to get certain inspections. Now, personally, I like to schedule a home inspection as soon as we go under contract. Ideally, I like to have it within the first couple days of the due diligence period. This way, we have plenty of time for inspections, and we'll know right from the beginning if there are any major issues with the house. Your realtor will help you schedule the inspections and advise you on what inspections that you should get and which ones you may not need. We'll also help you understand the inspection reports. Now, the general inspection typically takes about 4 hours, but you'll only need to be there for the last 30 minutes, which is the summary. And the summary is when the inspector reviews all of their findings, goes over some important things about the house, and then within 24 hours, you will get a detailed inspection report with photos. At that point, you will review the inspection with your realtor, and you will decide on what repairs or repair credits you would like to ask the seller for. Now, negotiating repairs can sometimes take a little bit of time, especially if you have to get quotes from a contractor. But the ultimate goal is to have all of the repair negotiations completed before the end of the due diligence period. The next big event to happen during the due diligence process will be to have the appraisal. Now, the appraisal typically takes place within the first week or two of going under contract, and there are three possible outcomes. The first outcome being that the home appraises at the value that you're under contract for, which is the most common outcome. The second outcome being that the home appraises for higher than what you're under contract for, which is great because that means you have a little bit of built-in equity. And then finally, the third outcome is that the home appraises for lower than what you're under contract for. And this is not great because we want the home to at least appraise at the value you're under contract for because the bank will only lend you on that amount. Now, in the event that this happens, you do have a few options. You could either bring the difference in cash, or you can renegotiate with the seller to either bring a portion of the difference or to just lower the price. And if you are in a balanced market, typically the seller will just lower the price to the appraised value, but it absolutely depends on the market conditions and the specific situation. Coming up on the end of your due diligence period, you'll want to make sure all of your negotiations have been complete, you've ordered your insurance, and your financing has been finalized. Now, again, as I said before, there are a lot of moving parts that will happen during the due diligence period, especially when you're tying up those loose final ends. And your realtor and your lender will help you and make sure that you have done everything that you need to do to put yourself in a good position for closing. Now, once your due diligence period is complete, you will then have your final walkthrough. The final walkthrough of the home is done either the morning before closing or the day before closing. And the purpose is to make sure that the seller has removed all of their belongings and any repairs that you have negotiated to be complete have been completed. And depending on the type of repairs, it's sometimes advised to have a re-inspection to make sure they have been done in a good workmanlike. The final step in the home buying process is to go to closing. So as I mentioned before, in North Carolina and South Carolina, our closings are done at the attorney's office. They take about an hour and you will sign a lot of paperwork. When you're done signing the paperwork, the attorney will then send your information to the Register of Deeds and they will transfer the deed into your name. Now, if you're buying a house in North Carolina, it's likely you will not get your keys at the closing table, but once the deed records with the county, which typically can take a couple of hours. But once the deed's recorded, you are officially a homeowner. Congrats! So there you have it, from contract to close, the home buying process. If you have any questions about buying a house, selling a house, or relocating to the Charlotte area, do not hesitate to reach out. All of my information is below. And once again, my name is Milena with eXp Realty.